You're listening to the RITE Retirement Show.
70% of people out there listening to the show today are going to need some level of care. It doesn't necessarily mean that 70% are going to end up in a nursing home, but 70% of people will need some assistance out there. The biggest fear is running out of money for the retiree, but what we see is not enough people spend enough of their money.
Chris prides himself in what matters to you. This is the RITE Retirement Show.
Hi there, I'm Luann Fulmer, and we welcome you to the RITE Retirement Show with certified financial planner, financial advisor Chris Wallace. He's at the firm. Both, of course, here again today to give us some helpful advice about retirement planning. So we always start off with the phone number because if you have questions, then you can certainly reach out to Chris and our awesome team at WG Financial Group, 256-937-2010. Text the word visit if you like to text. Text the word visit. You can communicate that way to get on their calendar complimentary. It's a complimentary discovery session to see where you are with your retirement planning. Remember to check us out on Facebook too throughout the week because anything that pertains to retirement, if Chris wants to do an update on that regarding headlines, he will add that at WG Financial Group 256, that Facebook. And remember, the motto is plan, retire, and play. You're going to hear us talk about that throughout the entire show. Find us online at wgfinancialgroup.com. And this show is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just search for the RITE Retirement Show. So hello to you both, Chris and Graham. So excited to be here with you again today.
Hey, Luann, glad to be back. We were off last week.
I know.
Yes, you had a...
Did you miss me?
We did, yeah. You had a birthday, though, right?
I had a birthday. I can't say it was a big birthday, but it's as big as I've ever had. Let's put it that way.
Well, pre-show, we were talking about, this will be the year you hit your full retirement age for Social Security. So that's kind of a big birthday. I mean, maybe not as big as like getting your driver's license or
not as fun.
Getting to 21 or something, but. Well, I think it's kind of fun. Some extra money from the government.
Yeah, that's true. Extra money
never hurts.
Yeah, you never get that.
Have you waited till FRA, Luann?
Yes, I am waiting. Yeah, I have to wait 10 more months. I just turned 66 for all of you that may be wondering. 66 and 10 months is my full retirement age. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, Luann, we are, like I said, glad to be back. Glad you had a good birthday.
Yeah.
Glad you waited on FRA.
I did. I waited. And so, of course, we are waiting right now on pins and needles for you guys to give us a market update. What's going on?
Market update. Yeah, market is doing well right now. I don't want to say much to jinx it. It's kind of continuing to go up, and the new tax law was passed, and we kind of discussed some things on that last week, Graham. And one of our friends of the show actually has been on the show a couple of times. Actually, I think he sent Graham a note. I don't think he sent me a note, but he sent Graham a note just kind of making sure that we clarified something on the extra senior deduction there.
Yeah, and as I listened to the show back, I think we didn't make this super clear. So just wanted to clear this up for anybody who was listening. So one thing we talked about for quite a while about the bill, because this is one of the things that I think most directly impacts seniors, is that extra bonus deduction of $6,000 per person for being age 65 plus with the phase out and everything. And we were talking about it mostly in terms of like an extra standard deduction, which, you can think about it like that. It's not incorrect to say that it piles on top of the standard deduction. However, it is an above the line deduction. And I don't think we made that distinction. So without getting in the weeds too much, what that means very simply is regardless of if you itemize or if you take the standard deduction, you will receive that extra $6,000. So that comes right off of, it's an adjustment to your gross income, not a itemized deduction. So if you itemize $50,000 of itemized deductions, you can still get the extra 6 to 12 if you're married. So just wanted to clarify that for people. And, really, that distinction just makes this even more favorable for seniors because 100%. It's not like now, let's say with this new high SALT cap, you're itemizing, like I said, $50,000. That doesn't mean you're going to lose out on the extra bonus deduction. You're not going to take the standard, but you're going to get more itemized and even a little bit more piled on top of that. So just something to remember for people out there. Obviously, there's that income phase out for it, but we just wanted to make that distinction so everybody kind of understood that.
Right. Yeah. The real meat on the bone, as we said last week, are in the above the line deductions. It is reduction to gross income. And we didn't make that super clear last week. So thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah.
Thanks to Kelly for reaching out.
Right.
Yeah.
Kinda
He's listening,
So
right? Yeah.
I don't know if you told Grant, "Hey, I'm not gonna jump on your show anymore with you if you're not gonna be a little more clear." He didn't say that. We're gonna try to get him on next week, as a matter of
Oh,
fact. I just sent him a text about 15 minutes ago to see if he wanted to join the show next week just to dive into some tax stuff a little bit more for
love
the
it.
listeners.
Yeah, because I mean, and I think, we talked about it at nauseum a couple weeks ago. So if you didn't catch that, you can hop out to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and hear that. But, I think this really is going to impact a lot of people. And a lot of people are curious about it. I mean, even inside of our internal client base, like not people who have never listened to the show. And I mean, we got, or never come in for a meeting, and we got a lot of, requests for them too. But even just my internal clients after the show listened to it and had a lot of additional questions. And, how does this change this, that, or the other that we're doing? So, there's definitely a lot of impacts there. And yeah, so I think it's worth catching if you didn't a couple weeks ago.
Mhm.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very
Let's
good.
let's move into interest rates.
Okay.
And so we got a Fed meeting coming up July 30th, so just
Yeah.
around the corner. Spoiler alert, no rate cut is going to take place this time, so we're going to go ahead and call it. We can tell that by looking at the Fed fund futures.
Hmm.
So no rate cut coming up. But if you flip out to September, it's still looking like a potential rate cut. There right now, it's about 58% chance that they'll cut 25 basis points,
Hmm.
and there's roughly a 40% chance that it's going to stay the same. There's like a 2.7% chance it's going to be more than 25 basis points. That's not going to happen. But remember, a few shows back, I kind of went on record and said that, hey, I think they're going to cut in September. So I'm going to stick with that, see if I'm right. I think I said the market's going to end up, what was the prediction there?
Said like
9.4.
9.8 or 4, I don't know,
Yeah.
9 point something.
Staying with that 2 gram right now. Market year to date's up like 7.42. Yeah, 7.42% as the time of recording here. So sticking with that, and no rate cut this time around, but we'll check in again a little bit later to see if there'll be a rate cut in September. Fed minutes. Let's kind of talk about that. So we were talking about the OBBB, as we like to call it. And I had somebody the other day say, why do you call it the OBBB? Just call it it's the OBBB. And I was like,
Wait to the third.
yeah, or I like that too. Hey, I like that. I like that. So I just replied. It was in writing. It was on a advisor page that I'm on.
Yeah.
And I replied to the guy. I said, say OBBB out loud to yourself
OBBB.
really fast, like
OBBB.
3 or 4 times.
OBBB. OBBB. OBBB.
Yeah, you sound like you're drunk, Louis. Literally sound like you're drunk. Just call it OBBB and be done with it.
Yeah,
If you
love
write it, you write it OBBB.
Yeah.
Did I say
Well,
4
there's a
Bs?
few more B's there
Did I?
than there's supposed to be. Yeah.
OBBB.
Yeah. So OBBB. Anyway, all right. So we were just talking about that. We won't make you say that again, Louis, because we think you're still drunk from your birthday party. So there were some things inside the bill that were eliminated, and they had to do with federal employees. And there was actually a lot. I didn't realize this till I started researching this, how many cuts to the federal benefits were in there. So we wanted to highlight, I think I highlighted 3 that we're going to talk about today. One of which you touched on a couple of weeks ago, Graham. I don't
Yeah.
remember in what context, but the elimination of the first annuity supplement, basically the Social Security supplement, that was in the bill to get eliminated. And as it went through the House and the Senate, so the House did propose eliminating it, but by the time it passed, it got pulled out.
Huh.
So the first Social Security, or basically it's the first annuity supplement, but we know it as the Social Security supplement, it remains in force. When I started looking through these things in the article that I was researching, it started to make me think they're really coming hard after the federal benefits. And if you look at the supplement, one of the other things that was cut was the high 3 calculation and changing that to a high 5 calculation. And that was supposed to save about $4.75 billion over 10 years. So again, just reading through all of these, looking at the potential savings, and just kind of just thinking about this from a rational standpoint, is like they're coming after the federal benefits, it seems like. There was also a cost-cutting bonus in there. And essentially what this cost-cutting bonus was, and I was told this a while back by one of my clients who's a federal employee, essentially, if there's a budget to do something, let's just say the budget's $2 million, they find every way possible to spend the $2 million. Now,
Mm.
the last time that I worked on a home project, I set a budget, and my goal, and I think everybody out there listening, the goal would to be come in under budget and save
Right.
money. Well, not the federal government budget. And the reason I was told, the reason for this, that this, at least this is what I was told, was if you don't spend all your money, you don't get the same amount next year, or you get less
I've
next year.
heard that before. I've heard of that.
Right. So this bonus for cost cutters, essentially, if you're able to identify and basically save so that you're not spending all of that, they were looking to bonus a certain amount of money. So receive up to $10,000 or 1% of the verified savings.
Hmm.
So I thought that was really good. I'm not sure why that got cut, because that incentivizes employees. Let's forget the federal government for a second, just any employee out there in a company. If you're going to bonus them a percentage of the savings, man, that's a good deal. That to me, that would incentivize a whole lot of employees to always look for cost cutting measures and savings. But that particular item got dropped from the bill. So there were several things in there that we wanted to talk about. We just went over, and just, I don't know, just seem to be looking hard at federal benefits
Yeah.
because they're pretty sweet. Federal benefits.
Yeah,
are pretty
they
sweet.
are. You always think
Yeah.
that. Anybody that has a state job, you go, oh, wow, you're going to get some good benefits,
Uh,
No, and I mean, I think a lot of employees, even though, these, and you said this, but just to clarify, none of these things actually made it into the bill. So none of these are going into effect.
Okay.
But it does, yeah, you're right, kind of show that there was a strong push. And we only brought up like 3 of them. There's like probably 8 or 10.
Oh, there's
Mm.
quite a few. Yeah.
Items, and I think I touched on a few of them a few weeks ago. But
Yeah.
it does show that there is a focus on that, and I think federal employees can kind of feel that. I mean, I don't know how you feel, Chris, but I was talking to a federal employee today who was initially saying, when we first started talking, that he was thinking age 67 retirement date, and he's like, I don't know, I feel like it could be any day now for me. Not even
Oh.
like getting laid off, just wanting to, be done.
Huh?
So I think federal employees are feeling the squeeze a little bit too, and we've had a large influx of people coming into the office and saying, hey, both current clients and radio show listeners and all that. So
TV show. Yeah.
yeah,
The whole nine. Yeah.
yeah. So I think they can feel that. And yeah, even though these things didn't go through, it's kind of a question of, for a lot of them, like, is there going to be these things in the future that are going to go through, and should I just go out while I'm ahead and say, because most likely you're going to get grandfathered into anything if you're already retired. So I think a lot of people are shifting their mindset to that a little bit more than they have been in the past.
Yeah. I agree. Just stay on alert if you're a federal employee.
Right. Yeah.
Things are changing.
I mean,
Things are
the
changing.
whole thing was, government waste, and that's what looks like they were trying to do, is take care of it. But then they ended up scrapping it. So that's interesting. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. Let's
Okay.
get into real
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah.
So I
Anything?
sent this out. Was it July? I think it was July 6th, Graham.
Yeah, it was not on the 4th this
It
time.
was a few days after the
A
4th.
few days after the 4th.
Doom scrolling again on
Yeah.
Facebook.
Yeah. I
And
know.
there was a reel that pops up, and I didn't dig into this one. I didn't really dig to see how this person was licensed or whatever, but essentially they were talking about fixed index annuities, and that they're uh, I guess they're really promoting them, I guess is what the premise of the video is. But again, they started out with, your advisor doesn't know what they don't know. And essentially, this person doing the video was kind of insinuating you've worked really hard for your retirement years. And basically, the way that I took the video was that basically roll all your money over into a fixed index annuity, which we feel like's a really bad idea. So again, I feel like she started out with, they don't know what they don't know, meaning the advisors don't know what these things are. She went on to say they don't make any management fees
Yeah.
on these. That's true. That's a fair statement. Some of them do have fees. The advisor typically doesn't make any fees. And if you want to get really into the weeds, there are some that can be managed, and there is fees coming off of them, but we'll stay kind of surface level here. So she said that, there's no management fees. In other words, insinuating, why would the advisor do this? Because there's no management fees. But she fails to mention that they do pay a commission. These products do pay a commission. So
Ah.
instead of getting kind of a stretched out fee, the advisor makes a direct commission from the insurance company. And then she used a term called a new aside. So this is basically what her idea of what people are calling rolling money from a 401k into an annuity. That's called annuicide. Graham actually said that he had never heard that term before. And I said, well, I've heard it. I've probably used it for years. What I call annuicide is where you annuitize an annuity to where you totally lose control.
Mhm.
So we were just talking about the FERS benefits and the annuities and pensions with, the federal government. When it comes to pension plans, they are very synonymous to a immediate annuity or a deferred annuity. And in those types of annuities, you do really lose control of the principal at this point. So, like, take the FERS annuity, for example. You have no principal really there. You've contributed to it throughout your working years, and you're taking income off of it for the rest of your life. Well, there are annuities out there like that. I'm not a huge fan of those types of annuities because there is the loss of control. And essentially, when you put money into it, you start taking income. That's called annuitize. And that's what I usually term annuicide. So it was kind of a unique use of that term,
Mhm.
maybe in a different way that I've never heard it before. And then the other thing she said is the money won't grow. And then she ends up pulling out some statements, which I think is a really bad idea to do on social media. Now, she didn't have any names shown there. And she throws the disclaimer, I've been given permission to share these.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, okay, I probably still wouldn't do that. So anyway, some of the returns she was showing on there, they're actually pretty good. But you're not going to see those, year over year over year in an annuity. So let's kind of talk about the way we feel like annuities should be used. So first and foremost, we think they are a tool, and we don't think that they're for everybody, right? I think that they have their use. Uh, One thing you might want to consider is, do you need income? So we're talking about the federal government employees. There are a lot of families out there that don't have pensions. So one way you can do or set up annuities is to provide income. Most of them have a lifetime benefit rider on it. So you don't have to annuitize. You're actually just taking income off the rider of the annuity. So that would be one way to do it. Another way to use the annuity might be to look at it as a safe money alternative. So a place to park some of your money to get some market upside and not have any downside. And if they don't have any fees, then you've eliminated the fees as well. So in our office, one of the things that we've kind of looked at is using it as a diversifier for some people, especially if you're, let's say you're more conservative and you don't want to use bonds. Because if we just look at the bond returns over the last 5 years, I can kind of run through those real quick. In the last year, so year to date, basically, uh, the aggregate bond index is up right at 4.5%. The 3 year on the aggregate bond index is sitting at about 2.5%. And if I go all the way out 5 years, the aggregate bond index is actually negative 0.6. So it's down, yeah, a little bit less than 1%. If we take an annuity and say, okay, we're going to use an annuity kind of as a safer alternative. It's an insurance product. It's not a securities. It's backed by the claims paying ability of the insurance company. So you want to always use a highly rated company. But let's just say we wanted to use an annuity in place of a bond fund. If we look at the last 1 year, or actually just take year to date, and let's assume, because these annuities come with cap rates, so they're not unlimited upside. That's the way some of these insurance agents want to act like they're going to make, 20% on average, and that's just not the case. They're a low earning vehicle. They're comparable returns to a bond and probably a little bit more than a CD in some cases. So let's just take a look at like year to date and assume that the annuity has a 7% cap rate. If that's the case, year to date, the annuity would be up 7% today if we're tracking the S&P. If I look back over 3 years and I base it upon the real actual returns of the S&P, and if you look at the S&P returns in 24, 23, and 22, 24 was just north of 23%, and 2023 was just north of 24%, and 22, of course, was negative. That was the inflation year where everything started kicking off. But if I look at the average return of the annuity over those last 3 years, it'd be 4.6%. And that's a little bit better than the ag index at 2.5. If I go back 5 years, I'm looking at 24, 23, 22, 21, and 2020, the 5 year average of an annuity with a 7% cap is 5.6%. And if I look at the aggregate bond index, if I was using AGG as like a bond fund, I'm negative 0.6%, and a five being in an annuity for 5 years at that point with a 7% cap would have averaged like 5.6%. So yeah, I definitely think they have their place for some people. They're for the more conservative investor. They are for people that are a little bit more conservative and don't want all of their money in bonds. Again, use them as a diversifier. Remember, they are an insurance product. They do pay a commission to the agent. All of that has to be disclosed. But just think of it in terms of that and not a tool for all your money, because that's the way the video kind of felt. It felt like, oh, this is where you should put all of your money, and that's not the case. And so I just kind of wanted to run over some numbers and kind of our thought process and methodology behind it.
Love it.
So,
Yeah, very
Graham,
good.
yeah, I didn't know if Graham had
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
to add there.
No, I mean, I think that's a great illustration of kind of, what that looks like on average. And I think one thing that I've seen a lot where, because everything is kind of a tool, and I think ultimately people like options. We can get really overwhelmed as people when we're given like a million options. But a lot of times when people are thinking about anything in life, like, oh, if I'm gonna buy a house, I want a few options of a few different areas I might want to live in, options of different houses. When people are thinking about investing their money, a lot of times they want some different options to say, like, hey, so one thing I've seen, quite a few times and a lot recently, especially whenever there's volatility, is there are certain people that get to a point in life where they just don't want to invest money anymore in the market at all. And you could very easily fall into the mindset of like, okay, well, I'm going to try to convince them to because they're going to make a better return over 20 or 30 years. And I would say you're correct in thinking that. But I mean, as advisors, I don't think our job is to talk people into investing a certain way. We can make recommendations.
Sure.
We can tell them what the different options are. But at the end of the day, sometimes you have to be able to provide some options to say, hey, I know you're super risk adverse. You don't want to lose any money, but here's some options that are better than just sitting in cash for the next 20 years and not earning, hard. I mean, I know interest rates are pretty good right now on, short duration, just cash money market funds, but for over the next 20, 30 years, are they really going to stay that high? Probably not. I think most people are, hoping not, because that would mean interest rates would stay
Mm.
that high for the next 20 or 30 years. So, all of those things are a little, more in flux. So I think ultimately, like I was saying, that just having those options kind of helps people to say, okay, well, maybe there are some alternatives. It's not for everybody. Some people are totally in on, hey, I'm not nervous at all about, market performance. I want to just be growth oriented. But then for other people, yeah, it's nice to be able to say, oh, we're going to park somewhere where there's limited risk and a little bit more upside than you're going to have in cash.
Yeah, I don't want to say this too. Like with the annuity, the type that we're kind of describing here, and the annuity was in the video, the death benefit. That's the big thing with a lot of people is if I die, the insurance company keeps my money. Well, it's not the case. I mean, there's the death benefit is the total balance of the annuity less any withdrawals at that point for like vast majority of them out there. The ones that don't have a balance are the immediate and the deferred annuity, and you kind of create a nuicide, So you have to be careful with that. So that's really the big hang up. The other big hang up with annuities is the time that you have to be in them. So a lot of annuities are 5, 7, 10-year durations. And essentially what that means is you have to remain in that contract. Now they will give you access to usually 10% of principal each contract year without any penalty whatsoever. But for a lot of people, that's kind of a hang up. They're like, oh, I don't want to tie up my money because that's, a couple $100,000 in a product and I can't get it out. And what if I want, more than 10%? Well, that's exactly why you don't put all your money there. That's 100% the reason why you don't. And if you use IRA money, my thought process are always been this: if you have money that's in an IRA, you're usually fairly reluctant to pull that money out because the more you pull out, you have to pay the IRS, more in taxes, right? So I always kind of think in a way where we are all, as United States citizens and workers and employees and retirees, we're kind of in a mental annuity with the IRS in terms of that because we don't want to pull out a whole bunch of money because the more
Yeah.
we pull out, we have to pay in taxes. So
Hmm.
there's a little bit of psychology behind this as well. But just to kind of wrap this up, the talk about annuities here is we think they're a tool, and again, they're not for everybody. I think they can be used as a diversifier. I do like them the ones that have guaranteed caps. Now this is a big deal with annuities. I'm sorry, I'm going to go on another tangent, so I'm not going to wrap it up. Sorry, I'm going to go a little bit longer. Some annuities have these cap rates. So a lot of them, just to keep it simple, will track the S&P. Okay, so everybody knows what the S&P is. It's easy. If the S&P is up, you know your annuity's going up. If the S&P's down, you know, in these types of annuities, you don't lose any principal. Okay, so most of the time, long term, we know the market is up more than it is down. It's up like 75% of the time if you look back over 100 years. So having an annuity vehicle that tracks the upside of the market but not the downside, it's not a bad diversifier in a way if the cap rate's high enough. But here's the thing. When you go to talk to some of these agents, they pull the illustration from the insurance company out and it looks glorious. And they show you all these back tested returns and all of that. And we all know that past returns are not predictive of future results, right? I mean, we all know that. But the pieces of paper kind of show it to be, you know, like it's going to make all of this money. And then the insurance company starts to drop the cap rates on you while you're in the contract. So if you're in like a 7-year annuity, in year 3, your cap rate might have been 7, and now at the end of the year, they're going to drop it to 5, you know, and they reserve the right to do that. And they tell you that in the contract. So typically the ones at the office that we write have the guaranteed caps for the entire term of the annuity. So that therefore the insurance company is put it in writing and said, hey, if you're going to be in this product, you're going to have a steady cap rate all the way through because we're going to hold it there until it's out of surrender at that point. So it gives you, the investor, you know, the opportunity to make a little bit more money because the insurance companies released one of those strings, as I like to call it. They're just not going to drop the cap rate on you. So it's important, again, to work with a firm, with a person that really understands the pros and the cons. I've been in the industry nearly 20 years. So investments, you know, taxes on withdrawals and tax efficient strategies, insurance-based products. I mean, I've been doing it for a long, long time. I've seen a lot of really good stuff. I've seen a lot of really bad stuff. And the really bad stuff, I try to teach our internal staff about. This is why we don't use these types of products. This is why we don't use these investment strategies, because it opens up some vulnerability to the client, you know, when they do that product. It also opens up us up a little bit as well in terms of reputation, because we want to be a firm that is offering solid, good solutions out there. So a lot of information right there on the A word. Probably a lot of people they probably turned the station at that point, but there's a lot of good information there to kind of digest and kind of think of it as a tool, just as you would a ETF, a stock mutual fund, things like that. But again, just to reiterate, it's an insurance product. It's backed by the claims paying ability of the insurance company. Make sure you use a highly rated company. So we are about halfway through the show, Luann. We're going to, if you're listening to this episode on the way to church, then obviously you want to hop out to Apple or Spotify and catch the whole episodes. We're going to get into the back half of the show here in just a minute. If you'd like to give us a call to set up your discovery session, you can do that by calling 256-937-2010. Again, the number is 256-937-2010.
Are questions about your financial future, such as, have I saved enough? Or will my retirement last, keeping you up at night? Text VISIT to 256-937-2010. That's text VISIT to 256-937-2010 and schedule your consultation today.
Are you a federal employee feeling pressure from the early retirement offers like VERA, VSIP, or the Deferred Resignation Program? Recent government initiatives have introduced significant changes to federal retirement programs, making employees feel pressured to consider early retirement or face potential layoffs. At WG Financial Group, we help guide federal employees through these uncertain times. Our team understands the complex federal retirement systems and can help you make informed decisions. Call 256-937-2010 to schedule your complimentary discovery session with us today. We'll help you assess your options and create a personalized retirement plan to help you feel more confident. Visit WGFinancialGroup.com or call 256-937-2010 to book your session. Firm is not affiliated with the U.S. government. Investment advisory services offered through AE Wealth Management, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
If lingering doubts like, have I saved enough? Or will my retirement funds endure? Are on your mind, it's time to consult with Chris Wallace. Text VISIT to 256 937 2010. That's 256 937 2010 to book your appointment and get the answers you need.
You're listening to the RITE Retirement Show. So happy to have you along. Of course, Chris Wallace, president of WG Financial Group. He is a certified financial planner and financial advisor. Then we have Graham Bauer on the show with us today, who is also a certified financial planner, financial advisor, and an enrolled agent at the firm. So remember, you can always catch us online at wgfinancialgroup.com. Head there. Find out all about the awesome team at WG Financial Group. And you can always, like Chris just said, catch this show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just search for The RITE Retirement Show. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Luann Fulmer. And, when you think about retirement planning, a lot of people think that their expenses are going to drop once they stop working. Maybe they're only going to need about 70, 80% of the income that they had from when they were working. But here's the deal. What if some of this conventional wisdom is completely wrong? What if retirement spending actually follows a very different pattern than this sort of neat, predictable decline that financial calculators assume? So that's where I want to go right now. Chris, I'll start with you. Why do you think that retirement spending assumptions often miss the mark?
Well, I think while you're working, I think maybe the tendency is that maybe you'll spend more money, or some of these calculators are bigger in end that you're going to spend more. But you sort of develop a lifestyle off your work paycheck that maybe you're working right now. You develop that lifestyle. Out of all of the things and rules of thumb that I disagree with, and there's a lot of them that I disagree with, this one I'm actually kind of on board with, the 80% rule.
Okay.
I think that is, if you have enough to retire on net, like 80% of what you're bringing home, then I think you can probably make it work. And if for most people, that is, I would say for most people. But that is a number that I do feel pretty good about. But I do agree that retirement spending can be a little bit more early on, because you might want to travel. There's some other things that you may want to do when you retire that you may not feel like doing, say when you're about 80 years old or something like that. So it can have a tendency to increase early on in retirement, but you just kind of budget for that. You kind of build that into the plan. You have what you need every month, and then you add in those bigger things that you want to do. Graham, I'm anxious to hear kind of how you feel about that 80% rule.
I think generally speaking, that's going to be pretty close for a lot of people. Now, I'll throw out, the caveat that, when we're looking at someone's retirement, we're not usually targeting 80% of their, working spending. The goal, if it's, realistic, is a lot of times to try to get as close as you can to what you're spending today, so you don't feel a huge adjustment in your lifestyle.
Yeah.
However, that can, vary pretty vastly when you're talking about, somebody who is making like $400,000 a year. Unless they've saved super duper well, it's probably going to be hard to replicate, that type of income in retirement if they were even spending all that. But one thing I try to, make sure people remember as they're thinking about this is, you're going to have a little bit more net income in general in retirement, just because you're not going to have as much in taxes. You're not going to be paying FICA taxes on your income anymore. So that's, a 7.65% adjustment, just right there. You're probably going to be paying a little bit less in overall income taxes, because there's a good chance Social Security is a part of it. It's taxed a little bit more favorably. And so, on top of that, your retirement withdrawals might not have to be quite as great to get you up to the net number that you actually need. And then, while you're working, in addition to taxes, you're probably putting money away too. And there's not really a great reason to still be saving the same way you're saving when you're working, when you retire, unless you just want to leave your beneficiaries a massive, pot of gold when you're gone. But, most people are not putting $30,000 in their 401k anymore, and $7,000, well, they're not working anymore, but they're not putting money away in a savings account or brokerage account or anything like that. So those types of things fall off too. So what might have been $150,000 of income after taxes, after your savings and all of that, you can probably live on far less than 150 and still feel like you're bringing in about the same amount that you were before.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, Graham. Good, excellent points there, actually. The savings. So you mentioned savings and how we're wired, like pre-tax, save, 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 contribute, contribute. When we retire, we've run into people like this before, and we've mentioned this on the show a couple times, where they have like savings in their budget. Well, you have to be careful with that, especially if you're taking withdrawals from an IRA, because I usually say it like this: like if you're going to save $1,000 a month because that's what you used to do while you're working, but now you're having to pull that $1,000 a month out of your IRA to pay the tax on it, to put it back in a savings account, to pay the taxes on the interest earned again, you should just leave it in the IRA is what you should do. Or if you're going to pull it out and pay the tax just to let it sit, then do a Roth conversion at that point. At least the tax implications will be the same. If you pulled it for 12,000 for income, you pull 12,000 to put in savings, you pull a 12,000 to do a conversion. The taxable event is all the same. And if you're literally just pulling it to save it, then convert it. That way the growth on it in the future is no longer taxable if it's in a Roth IRA. Now there's the wait periods and that you got to worry about. That's a conversation for another day. But that's just some kind of thoughts there on the savings aspect of things in retirement. You have saved where you don't really have to save anymore. I think you can cost cut, but not purposely save like you used to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people feel like, the money is not their money until it's in a bank account, and there's some truth to the fact that, yeah, not all of it, not 100% of it is yours until
Yep.
it's in a bank account, if it's in a pre-tax account, because there is going to be, some taxes for that.
Sure.
But after you're retired, you're past 59 and a half, done working, you have money in an IRA, there really isn't, a huge difference between pulling it out today and paying taxes on it to let it sit in a savings account and pulling it out tomorrow, or to your point, Roth converting it and then having it in tax-free status if you needed it in the future. But it is just one of those habitual things, I think, for a lot of people, that it just feels good to put more money in
Yeah.
a savings account. So, I try to get a lot of people when they retire to sort of come up with like what we like to call the sleep good money
Yeah.
number in their bank account. That just like, what makes you sleep good at night knowing that you have that much in cash? Because I know, and I've said this all the time, but because I do this a lot in my own personal life, that I just look at my bank account and that is how much money I feel like I have.
Yeah.
Because the other accounts, they don't show up when I open my banking app and do my facial recognition. It's just checking and savings account, and that feels like everything I can spend.
Yeah.
So, myself personally, and I don't do this, but, I would probably feel way more comfortable spending money if I had $100,000 in my bank account and, no money anywhere else, or, 200,000 in a bank account. Doesn't really matter because I know that's liquid money I can get to. So sometimes it's better to say, hey, going into retirement, maybe we will keep a little bit more in the bank account early on
Yeah.
to make you feel comfortable spending, but it's good to kind of pick a number so you don't just keep perpetually funding
Yeah.
a savings account for no reason, with no purpose for the money other than, just having it be even more available. Because there'll be times where we sit down with someone when they retire and they have $30,000 in their bank account, and they come back, to the next review in a couple months, and it's like they have, 6 months later, another $25,000 in there. And we're like, how did that happen? They're like, whoa, well, the Social Security checks are coming in and they're just kind of going in. My first reaction is always, why?
Why?
Like, what are you saving for?
Spend,
Well,
spend.
well, that or why'd you collect?
Yeah.
If you don't need it, like
Yeah.
continue to get the growth on it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So true.
But money's emotional. Like
Yeah.
money's emotional. It will cause you, if you're not careful, to make some really wonky decisions, I'll say. They may not be the best. They may not be completely wrong, but they're not as efficient as they could be because you've let the emotions take over. And maybe they didn't come sit down and talk to somebody like us. And again, if it's us, great. If it's not, just find somebody you can trust to kind of help you, because sometimes reining in the emotions is key.
Think about retirement, it represents freedom. And freedom does come with a price tag. You want to do all these things especially when you first retire. You have all these plans. You always hear people planning these things or hobbies they're going to do, whatever. Maybe they even want to make some home renovations at the beginning of their retirement. I want you guys to please walk us through what we've often called the three seasons of retirement, but I want to focus on retirement spending. What would you say are the three seasons of retirement spending, Chris?
Yeah, so you have the more active years, which is really the first part of your retirement. So you could probably say that's your first 6 to 8 years for, I would say, the average person. If you're, 55 and retiring right now, that active season is going to be a little bit longer. And that's also, a lot of people would know it as the go-go years. The corny saying that
Yeah.
I used to think is really corny. I still think it's corny, but it's so true.
Yeah.
But really just being more active in the first part of your retirement. Then you have the kind of the settling in phase, the mid 70s to early 80s, where you're doing some things, you're doing some traveling, you're still spending, but you're not spending at the same rate you were early in retirement. And then you have the care phase where that's the last part of your retirement where there's probably going to be some increased medical. There may be some additional healthcare costs, but you're really not spending money for lifestyle reasons as much as you did in those first two phases. And those are kind of the three phases that we would see most people go through. The longer I've been in the industry, so again, been in the industry more than 20 years at this point, I've started to see these phases, and I can see, certain clients when they come in, they start to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing as much.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the, taglines at the office that we have, our motto is plan, retire, and play. And that's for a reason because we want our clients to be confident enough in their retirement plans to really go out and play and enjoy each other. And quick sad story here, actually. The reason this is important to us is my wife went to school with a guy. I think he's probably, so I'm 52. I think he's probably 49.
Mm-hmm.
They're closer to my wife's age. Well, he lost his wife a couple weeks ago to stomach cancer.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I get a
No.
call from a high school friend, and she lost her husband at 53, sorry, to colon cancer.
Uh-huh.
And just last week, we lost another client to battling cancer. Now, why do I say that? Not to make the mood somber and the show sad and all that. It is, you don't know when you're going to be called home. And it's real important, especially during those active years, those pre-retirement years, that you're making memories with the family. You just never know when you're going to leave this earth. And I can just tell you from speaking with those individuals, the widows and widowers, it's a difficult situation for them. And now they have to figure out how to do life alone, at least temporarily, because maybe the younger ones might get remarried. It's not even on the cards for them, in the cards for them right now. But just make those memories with your loved ones out there. And I cannot stress that enough.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. So while you can, however old you are, but make sure you do that. Of course, I've been experiencing that with my best friends. They've lost their husbands, two of them, and then my brother-in-law, too early. At my age, at age 66, passed away, colon cancer, same thing. So yeah,
That's becoming a lot more prevalent here lately, Luann.
the colon cancer.
Oh, yes. I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Mm-hmm.
I went for my physical when I was 50, and I remember the doctor telling me, well, it's time for your exam, that one.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like,
No.
well, I'm just now 50. She said, you're late. And I was like, wait, it's 50. She said, no, they moved it to 45.
Oh my.
And that's because there's been a lot of new cases for younger individuals. And man, I think it's got to do with the food we eat, to be honest with you.
I agree.
Yeah.
A lot of the things we're putting in our body,
Right.
and more and more younger people are coming down with colon cancer. So it wouldn't surprise me. I told my wife, I said, it wouldn't surprise me to see the age drop to 40 in the next 10 years, just
Mhm.
because the number of young cases, continues to rise. So
Right. Yeah. My husband, they said, now you got to start. Your brother had it, so now he has to go every 5 years. He just had his 1 week ago. Yeah.
yeah.
So
Here's the other thing I want to say, Luann. Sorry, I didn't mean to get off on this
it's
tangent.
okay.
I mean, I meant to, but I didn't mean to go this long. But go to the doctor, get your physicals, especially men out there, because we tend to be a little bit hard headed. Don't want to go to the doctor, don't want to get our blood drawn. I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're your Graham's age, my son's age. Go get some blood work done. so you at least know
Stay
because
on it. Yes.
yeah, there's you want to know if something's going on, and you don't even have to go to like a doctor. You could go to like a normal doctor, even though I'm not. Some people say I'd rather do naturopathy. That's fine. That's whatever you want to do. Just go get your blood drawn
Right.
and have it reviewed. Look at your
Mhm.
cholesterol. Look at your blood counts and all that, so that you'll know. So you're only, in my opinion, you're just putting yourself and your family at risk if you're not taking those precautionary measures.
And you have to be your advocate. You have to
You do.
be the number one advocate for yourself, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of really awesome doctors out there for sure. There are. So I'm not at all saying anything
No, no,
negative
no.
about doctors. But some people have a stigma about going to quote unquote doctors and they want to go holistic. That's fine, whatever. But you still need to have your blood drawn, whether you go to a doctor or you go to a
Yeah.
holistic doctor.
See what's going on. You want to catch it as early as possible if there is anything. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think on the that I guess to add a somewhat more positive note too on this, in the midst of still tragedy, and it's horrible to when anybody passes away young. I think your mid 60s is young to pass away these days. That's mid to late 60s is not certainly younger than average life expectancy. But we've also had a lot of good news from clients who have had
Yes.
cancers and
Thank you.
have gotten over it. So that's been really great to hear this year too. So I mean, it's always a mixed bag. But no, I totally agree. Just staying healthy, and that's I think that's like that is a priority for a lot of people, and it should be too in retirement when you have a little bit more time to kind of stay active, your body and your mind, because it's not just cancers, it's dementias and things
Yeah.
like that you just want to make sure that you stay active, you stay doing things, you stay social. I think it will improve people's timeline and just quality of life just more than they can imagine in retirement. I know my grandfather passed away not too long ago, and he for pretty much my whole life he lived to 87, almost 88. And I mean, he was very active. He swam multiple times a week. He went on walks all the time. He was involved in his local community and a lot of different things. And that gave him, I think, a lot of extra years. No one else in his family
Yeah.
lived to even 70. So those things they really do add more to your life, I think, than people realize.
So, all right, back to just spending in retirement and making sure, we're getting the most out of our money. A lot of people, a lot of professionals say that 4% rule, that traditional 4% withdrawal rule, is what we need to do with our money. But I want to get into that because we often talk about how it doesn't quite align with the retiree's actual spending patterns, right, Chris?
It doesn't. Graham, are you okay just kind of leading this one off?
Sure, yeah,
Discussion
yeah.
on this one.
I think, the 4% rule is a good baseline. And I like using it sometimes as well for really quick, to give a really quick number on something as an example. I was talking to a friend the other day who works in a totally different field, but she's in the medical field and a professional there. And she was saying, "Oh yes, so many people ask me questions, and I feel like my answers are kind of ambiguous sometimes. Of like, oh well, it depends." And I'm like, okay, yeah, I feel like I do the same thing a lot of times because yeah, it does depend on your situation. So sometimes when you're asked a question and trying to give a quicker response, to give a general example, I think the 4% rule is kind of a good, easy to understand thing from that perspective. I don't think that people always use it in the right way. And I do think that, if you were planning on just pulling 4% blanket, there's more to it than that. For one thing, I think it really depends on when you retire, how long the money is going to need to last. I don't think that I ran into a few cases not too long ago where people worked into their late 70s, sometimes early 80s. If you're retiring that late in life, you can probably be a little bit more liberal with your spending than 4% if you have a lot of extra expenses because just quite frankly, unless you have crazy longevity, you probably don't have 30 years in retirement. Where if you're retiring at 55, or if you're, in your 60s, but you have a wife or a husband who's 10, 12 years younger than you and going to have a long time horizon, you might need to scale it back a little bit. So I think it's a good, baseline to kind of say, hey, a quick example, you're not taking anything out of your account. If we just started drawing 4%, it would be somewhere around this. But I think it more depends on need and on, what your general time horizon is.
Yeah, I think also all those are excellent points, Graham. So this 4% rule was created back in the early 90s, and one of the things I like to look at is just data from Morningstar. So what's Morningstar saying? And if we look back in 2021, they were recommending a 3.3% withdrawal rate. In 22, that jumps up to 3.8, and in 2024, they've kind of got it back down to 3.7. So the general consensus from Morningstar just is a little less than 4%. But to be honest, I don't know one single person that uses the 4% rule. I strictly kind of view this as a rule of thumb, and I agree with you, Graham, about how sometimes it's probably good for quick math and say, okay, well, how much they have saved? Can they pull 4%? And what's that amount? There's a lot of factors that factor into the 4% rule if you use it truly the way it was designed. And it requires some, flexibility in terms of withdrawals based on balances. So I kind of like it as a rule of thumb, and that's about it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know anybody, and I've never necessarily recommended to anyone, hey, just use the 4% rule.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. Because there is a lot more to it than that. But I'll say I think the way that I'll use it the most is, if someone has a good social security amount, good pension, and they're not really spending any money, and inheritance isn't a huge goal to them, to say, hey, I mean, even if we just started pulling an extra 4% of your, invested net worth, it would be, X amount, 15,000, 20,000, what could we spend a little extra just taking an amount? So it's kind of nice, I think, for that, just kind of quick things like that. But yeah, you're right. I don't know anybody that's like, yeah, I have Social Security and the 4% rule, and I'm ready to retire.
Yeah, nobody's come in the office and said, "Here's my financial plan. Here's my Social Security, and I'm doing the 4%."
Yeah,
Nobody's ever said that to me.
Right.
not yet, at least.
Yeah, not yet. They will. They will next week. Somebody will call and just to come in and say it, just to say it.
Yeah.
Listen to your show. I wanted to be the first one.
Yeah. Well, one thing that you guys do really well is this is what you do with your clients, with your retirees that come in. You help them create a retirement income strategy that actually aligns with their goals, their resources, and that's how you help them. And it all starts with that discovery visit, right? So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So basically, a discovery session is our first meeting. It's easy. It's just a chance for us to discover a little bit more about you as the prospect, and for you guys to learn a little bit more about what we do. And through that process, we end up developing a financial plan. We go through a couple meeting process to do that. We're transparent with everything that we do, but we use the RITE model. That's why the show was changed to the Right Retirement Show. The TV show was changed to the Right Retirement Show, because we feel like that everything should be congruent at the company, and that's the model we use. So everything should be about right, and we want to do our best to do it right. So RITE, retirement income, investments, tax efficient strategies, estate and legacy planning. Those are really the pillars of a retirement plan that we feel like if you address those and address those adequately, then you're going to have a good chance at doing what you want to do in retirement, obviously within reason. I'm not going to be able to go out and buy LeBron's yacht or something like that. I don't even know if he owns a yacht. Maybe
Probably.
he probably does.
probably
you're probably
does.
right. But if you address those, and we use a report card system, which we hadn't said it this show, but our report card touches on it touches up to 25 areas of financial planning. So a lot of times I'll just kind of wonder if other advisors out there are touching on that many areas, or are they just talking about investments and returns? Because when it comes to retirement, there's a much bigger picture. There's a much more holistic picture that I think you have to focus on as an advisor. And I think you have to ask and be inquisitive about other areas other than just their investments or worried about money.
Okay, very good. The Right Retirement Plan is what you can get. And I'm going to give you the phone number too, as we're sitting here talking about that. You may call that number, or you may text the word visit to 256-937-2010. Make sure you ask for the discovery session, get on their calendar, and be on your way to planning for retirement. I want to move to the fact that we were, what we were talking about earlier. Retirement's a long journey. It kind of breaks down into three parts. And one of the things you said was, and people in their mid 70s and 80s maybe spend less, okay, as they move into those times because they're not doing as much. But then I want you to expand on why that shift often happens.
Well, our bodies tend to wear out. And I can tell you the older I get, I'm kind of laughing at myself. My wife would tell you this too. If she were here, she would be like shaking her head, probably screaming in the mic, yes, yes. Like I'm just different about how I look at things. I don't have as much patience as I used to when I was younger. And again, I'm just being honest. And I think the older we get settled in our ways, and there's just certain things we don't want to do. And I think the older we get and our bodies are a little bit more tired, it's harder to climb the steps on a airplane or jetway or whatever and do the hikes that you would have done in your early 40s. So you just don't feel like doing those things. You're kind of like, I'll just stay around the house. I'm good to stay here. I have what I need. I've lived in my house for a while now, and I've done all my little upgrades, and this is kind of my humble abode, as they would say. And there's no need to travel, but a lot of it has to do with just that your body just can't do it the same way that it did 20 years ago. But you may decrease some of that actual lifestyle spend, but then the healthcare expenditures start to kick up. And healthcare, if you look at over the last 20 years, has really just grown at a massive rate. So I feel like when a retiree goes to retire and they're working on a retirement plan, man, that healthcare decision is incredibly important. It's important to inflate it adequately. It's also important to understand with these IRMA limits that you have to deal with Medicare, how all of your income and the conversions that you may be doing Roth-wise, how that's going to impact your Medicare premiums and the IRMA limits. Because what I see happening in the coming years is obviously the cost of medical is going to continue to go up. But as balances grow up and RMDs kick in and you're having to pay extra taxes at the time of your life when you're 75, 73, 75, having to pull RMDs, maybe you go into a different tax bracket. Healthcare's going up, and now you tack a couple of IRMA limits on top of that, and your Medicare premiums, $200, $250, $300 a month. Now you're talking about substantially more to the cost of living. So I think understanding that when you're building out the plan, and I truly believe that is hard for the normal average retiree out there listening to the show today to figure out, to kind of look at that number and go, what in the world is he talking about? And what does he mean? But that's part of what we do for families as we build out retirement plans like that, is we're looking at some of these things, kind of showing you, hey, we've got to be careful of this because this may happen. And if you'd like for us to sit down and kind of build out a plan for you, go over a strategy with you, you can give us a call at 256-937-2010. No gimmicks here. If you do gimmicks, we don't do gimmicks here. With no free stuff. You don't get a free report, no free tax report, anything like that. No gimmicks here. You just come in, get real data. 256-937-2010. Luann, it's been a great show. Hope everybody's enjoyed it. I hope everybody has an awesome and blessed week. And remember to serve every person in every situation with a servant heart.
Please remember that converting an employer plan account to a Roth IRA is a taxable event. Increased taxable income from the Roth IRA conversion may have several consequences. Be sure to consult with a qualified tax advisor before making any decisions regarding your IRA.
Graham Bauer holds the enrolled agent designation, but is not currently offering tax preparation services. Neither the firm nor its agents may give tax advice. Individuals should consult with a qualified professional for guidance before making any purchasing decisions.
Investment advisory services made available through AE Wealth Management LLC, AEWM. AEWM and WG Financial Group are not affiliated companies. Insurance products are offered through the insurance business WG Insurance Services. WG Financial Group is an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through AE Wealth Management LLC, AEWM, a registered investment advisor. AEWM does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by WG Insurance Services are not subject to investment advisor requirements. AEWM and WG Financial Group are not affiliated companies. companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only and is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. WG Financial is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. Information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by WG Financial. This radio show is a paid placement.